As a kid who grew up in the late 90s/early 2000s, Pokémon was my entire life. The cards, the games, the toys, I wanted everything and made it my entire personality. Something that has clearly carried on into my adult life as well, hence everything that you're currently watching. But the main thing that initially pushed my love for Pokémon was watching the show, both the weekly episodes that were shown on multiple different channels here in Scotland and, crucially, the movies. I watched the first, second, fourth and fifth movies literally hundreds of times as a kid. I only watched the third film once, and it made me want to collect the cards of the Pokemon I'd see in them, get the games to collect them myself, and looking back, they're some of my favourite movies ever. But how good actually are they? Nostalgia blinds everyone, and looking back at general things I enjoyed as a child, a lot of it hasn't held up. But then I thought, well, why not see what every single Pokemon film is like? I left the fanbase when I was just starting high school and only got back into it properly a few years ago, so there is literally a decade plus of films that I have no knowledge of. So here we are. I've watched all 24 animated Pokemon films and will give my thoughts on each one now. Some caveats. As mentioned, I have seen the first 5 films in this list a number of times. In particular, like I said, films 1, 2, 4 and 5 will have been watched a minimum of 5 times each when I was wee, so there will be most likely some nostalgia tax that you have to add on. Secondly, I've not caught up with the anime. The last time I watched the Pokemon anime in terms of newest episodes was back in around 2005-06, so if I complain about something happening in a film that I don't feel makes sense / isn't clear and you're sat there going, well, actually in the anime, that's fine. Just ignore what I'm saying. Honestly, that's a pretty good suggestion in general. Also, I am going to be giving each film a score at the end out of 10. Don't take this as a hard and fast ranking. I'm adding the score just to generally sum up my thoughts, but you don't need to view them as a list of ranking them 1 to 24. And finally, I have biases that are stupid. If there's a Totodile / Croconaw / Feraligatr in one of these films, I will most likely enjoy it more. Even if it's just featuring another Pokemon I like as a main character, I'll probably enjoy it more. Likewise, if a central Pokemon is one I don't really care for, I probably won't enjoy it as much either. Sorry, I don't make the rules. If you enjoy this video, please jump across to my Twitch channel, Scottish Totodile, where I do Pokemon challenge runs, Nuzlocks, shiny hunts, you name it. We have a great time over there and we'd love to have you. Right, let's get into it. Let's be honest with ourselves, you've all seen this one. I don't need to go into too much detail in terms of the plot for you. Mewtwo gets created, is absolutely raging that humans are enslaving him, he's very much got a point there by the way, uses his mind control to steal an Earth's joy and makes a cloning island in order to take over the world with genetically superior Pokemon. Lovely start. Like all of you, I imagine, this was the first Pokemon movie I ever saw. I actually still have the yellow VHS in the box it came in back in the late 90s. I will be honest though, it's fine. It's not this incredible spectacle that I remember it being, it's just a very standard kids movie. I actually forgot that the Harbour Master at the start literally just tells you what's going to happen with the tiers with all the Pokemon at the end, by the way. There's the things we all remember, Team Rocket's English dub calling Scyther Alakazam, Donphan is just casually revealed right at the start of the movie, the really over the top Brother My Brother song where the Pokemon are fighting. Side note here, there's an insane line which goes,
Pokemon aren't meant to fight. Not like this.
oh, so it's fine for them to burn, electrocute and drown each other, but a fist fight is where you draw the line? In terms of putting Pokemon on the big screen, it did its job, not much more to say. Also, yes, this is where I will add in that in 2019 there was a remake and I did watch it for this, but it's literally just the same film. So, whatever, here's where I'm referencing that. Here we go, this is the good stuff. Pokemon 2000 was my favourite as a kid. It gave me my love of Lugia, who remains my favourite legendary Pokemon, and also the music was just so iconic. Neil Stewart, as the Collector, has an incredibly cool voice, and it's notable that the voice acting seems to be at a slightly higher level in this film compared to the last one. Meowth also has the best line in the entire film.
Listen to me, kid. When you get involved with the opposite sex, you're only asking for trouble.
Yes, and that's the kind of trouble I stay out of.
Yous two don't need the opposite sex because you got each other.
What does that mean?
Not funny.
The reveal of Lugia is just the coolest thing ever. You've just been seeing shadows and shapes of him under the waves throughout the entire film, so when all three of the legendary birds are fighting each other over that frozen water, having a giant whirlpool explode out of the frozen sea and Lugia spin out it before calling out in a kaiju-like cry blew my tiny little mind when I first saw it. Ash and the gang feel more connected to this story as opposed to just people who happen to be caught up in the story like last one, having to actually go and get each stone before it's revealed that Ash is the one the whole prophecy is built around is way more enjoyable. There, of course, are some issues though. On the prophecy, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that the only people to realise the prophecy references Ash are Misty and a random Slowking. Surely the island of people who have made their entire worldview revolve around said story would question it if a guy named Ash turned up. Additionally, there's just weird CGI that is now incredibly dated, but that can't really be helped. However, the best part, Team Rocket. I was always a fan of Team Rocket growing up, honestly, because I just liked how, despite clearly not being qualified to do anything that Giovanni needed from them, they keep trying. The film also compounds the fact that they're actually good people just down a bad path. Without them, Ash doesn't succeed in this film. They willfully choose to sacrifice themselves to ensure Lugia can keep flying.
Don't let go, they may not make it back.
Let's protect the world from devastation.
Guess we gotta let go.
Are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
What are you doing?
Team Rocket's blasting off with gold!
Team Rocket!
And at the end, get a lovely fourth wall break. Team Rocket are essential to me really enjoying a Pokemon movie, which, unfortunately for some later in this list, will reflect in the score. This isn't actually part of the film, however I wanted to give a special mention to the documentary style game show thing that is in the special features of the VHS and the DVD, where some studio had a bunch of kids perform different songs. There was loads of cool events and people dressed up as stuff. You're all seeing it on the screen now. I watched this stuff as much as I watched the film, and the songs that they sing, whilst now I can look at it as a guy in his late 20s and go, it's quite cringe, I still love that music. Shout out to that as well. A big part of why I love this film. Also, the end credits have Weird Al at the end. This is amazing. So as mentioned in the intro, this is the film I've seen the least amount of times out of the first 5. It was the only one I never ended up owning, so only watched it once at a friend's house. As a result, I don't have the same connection a lot of people seem to have with this film, however I won't deny its quality. The central plot of the film is a far more real and tangible story than the two that came before it. A little girl loses her dad and doesn't want to accept that fact. That's just a straight up real story. Adding Pokemon of course still makes it inherently more childlike, but it's still very messed up at points. There's a scene where a kidnapped woman with her dead eyes watches a little girl parade around on a big dog made from her own fractured mental health. This is a kids film, remember. I will say though, an objectively funny moment is when Molly asks for a mum, so Entei just runs out and finds the first woman he can and just goes, Yeah, that's fine, you'll do, come here. But, in fairness, in turn, I like that Ash's mum breaks out of the spell as soon as she sees him to signify that her love for her son is stronger than any spell Pokemon can put into place. That's well done. The ending is also the first real bit of character development in these films. Entei calls out to Molly to help him as he needs her belief to succeed, which then allows him to go on and win, and it's legitimately emotional. There are, of course, issues though. The weird CGI of the early 2000s remain, and as it's mainly based around the unknown, they feel very obviously removed from the film. Additionally, why are Unknown treated as the most powerful Pokemon ever in this, and just never are again? Also, Team Rocket are barely in this one. Sad times. Right. This is where the nostalgia did a lot of heavy lifting for me. I remember loving Pokemon Forever. It was my first introduction to Suicune. I have memories of Sam and Celebi being cool, and there's a Croconaw in it. It must be great. No, this is by a mile the worst one that I've watched so far. The exposition's clunky, so many plot points are either waved away or act as Deus Ex Machinas to make sure everything's fine. The villain is just a yassified Dr. Robotnik who can turn Pokemon into goths and never feels like a threat. It's so clear that everything will just be fine. Celebi is boring. Really, really dull. Suicune feels more of a bigger deal, honestly. Then at the end, there's the reveal that Sam is actually Professor Oak, which should be a way bigger deal than it's actually presented as, instead of just a, haha, isn't that funny? The only thing saving this from a 1 out of 10 is that Team Rocket have a few cool scenes. I like that you see the relationship between the three of them, with James and Meowth immediately not caring about anything else. As soon as Jessie is kidnapped, they just want her back. But overall, a real disappointment. We're back to the good stuff. So yeah, this is the last one I'd seen before taking on this venture, and honestly, after Forever I was worried it would be a slog, but thankfully I had nothing to worry about. Latios and Latias managed to have actual character that differentiates them from each other. The film introduces Pokemon as part of the world instead of just being used to battle like in a chariot race. The villains feel fresh and inventive. There's a Totodile. I mean, come on. But the biggest strength of this film is that there are actual stakes. It's set up very early on that Latios and Latias' father died saving the town from a flood. Immediately, you realise there's a chance if it happens again, one of them could die. So when Latios then sacrifices himself, you almost expect oh, don't worry, it's a kid's film, we found a way to bring him back. But no, he dies. That's something that isn't felt in the others, that actions actually have consequences, and it makes this film all the better for it. I like the portrayal of Kabutops and Aerodactyl as more animalistic versions of the Pokemon we already know. Oakley sounding more and more robotic as she's in the machine is a good way of physically showing her descent into mad power, and the shot of the water rising over the town is legitimately chilling. I didn't like how Team Rocket were a complete side note, and yes, it's very weird that Ash kisses Latias at the end, but overall, had a great time with this one. The first film I've not seen, and this one was okay. The main thing to talk about is that this features the first legendary that is featured throughout the entire film and can just talk to everyone. Lugia was able to communicate with Ash, but was only in a small percentage of Pokemon 2000, and Entei was a fictional creation by Molly, whereas Jirachi is just straight up talking. Only Meowth could do that before. Absol is in this, and look, I'm being honest, it gives this movie an entire extra point. for me. Absol is my second favourite Pokemon ever, so I'm biased, but sue me. The way they incorporate Absol as a bait and switch, seeing as you think it's here to destroy Jirachi but is actually there to save it, is really well done. Butler as a villain is quite good, unique that he's a magician and actually uses magic to trick Ash and the gang as opposed to just generic bad guy plot with bad Pokemon. Also, the Mecha Groudon was a cool design as well. But overall, it just wasn't super captivating, but definitely not the worst we've seen. Actually, speaking about the worst films, oh my god, this one is rubbish. Looking online after watching Destiny Deoxys, I couldn't believe the amount of people who seem to have such strong feelings towards it. There are so many stupid parts of this. Why does nothing happen after the initial battle for the best part of an hour? Why does this not really feel like a Pokemon film as so few Pokemon are included? Why does Ash send out a fire type against a Blastoise? And why is the film just so boring? Deoxys reminds me of Cell from Dragon Ball Z, but that's where the interest begins and ends. It's the longest film so far, and I felt every second of it. So many sections are filler to keep the movie going, and Ash, again, doesn't feel too central to the actual story. Not for me. Right, spoiler, I'm telling you all right now, this is the best one. There's others that come close, and I hope you'll stick around for that, but this is the best film the Pokemon Company have ever made. Immediately, the setting is really interesting. Going back in time to see how Pokemon integrated with humans throughout history is always fun, and the medieval setting really works here. Sir Aaron and Lucario look like the coolest combination of a trainer Pokemon I think I've ever seen. Team Rocket are in this as actual thought out characters that affect the plot. Lucario's arc of hating humans because he felt he was betrayed by Sir Aaron, to realising that humans are good with the help of Ash, to eventually finding out that Sir Aaron didn't betray him, he actually sacrificed himself for everyone, is the best arc of any one single character in any of these films so far. Ash and his friends are crucial to the story. Without them, Lucario can't learn the key lessons to take them to the end. There are two genuinely emotional moments in this as well. The first being Lucario realising his master didn't betray him, and then making the same choice he did hundreds of years ago so they can be together, as I've already mentioned, but then also Ash openly speaking about how much he loves Pikachu. It's great to see after the journeys that they've been on. Actual stakes are present again. Much like Latios earlier, Lucario gives up his life to save everyone. Additionally, Sir Aaron died thinking Lucario hated him, and that never gets resolved. Things actually matter in this. The only one thing that could be classed as a fault in this is that the Time Flower is quite clearly a Deus Ex Machina to get them out of trouble every time they need it, but honestly, I'm willing to overlook it in a movie this good. Genuinely, watch this if you haven't. It's wonderful. I have very little to say about this film, honestly. It just didn't grab me at all. It's not bad, like previous entries, but it's just quite paint by numbers and dull. Jack Walker reminds me of Captain Flashheart from Blackadder, so there is that.
Excuse me, I'm not a traitor. I was never on your side!
Flash by name, Flash by nature.
And I like the idea of Pokemon Rangers, but yeah, not much else to say. A generic story about getting a legendary Pokemon from one place to another. Skippable. In this film, a human turns into a Licky Licky and we are presented with this image. I don't have much more to say about this interaction, but needed you all to know what I'm going through making this video. In Rise of Darkrai, we again have a really good arc for a single Pokemon that boosts everything else around it. Darkrai is trying to protect a town against Dialga and Palkia, but the town don't really understand and misinterpret this and keep trying to hunt Darkrai. It's a quite simple plot, but it works well. Darkrai's arc of being saved by a girl years ago that ends up being the grandmother of our central character, Alice, to then sacrificing himself to save her is well done and doesn't ever feel rushed throughout the whole piece. Ash doesn't feel super needed. It feels like the entire plot would probably have happened regardless of if he was around, and the lack of stakes does take away from it a bit. Darkrai does choose to sacrifice itself, but then at the end it's revealed it's back looking over the town. But overall, a decent time spent and one that actually made me care as opposed to the Temple of the Sea before it. We are fully in the seesaw of movies at this point. You either get the high highs of Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, or you get Giratina and the Sky Warrior. Admittedly, the second in a trilogy of films that started with Darkrai and will end with the next film, so it does have some leeway in that sense, but god, this was just exposition, the movie. The villain is so one-note and boring, another generic I want to capture this unique Pokemon. Giratina is faceless and pretty dull, and Shaman, Jesus. Shaman is the single most annoying character we have had in these films so far. Whiny, cocky, never gets their comeuppance, and doesn't really seem to learn anything at the end. Infuriating. Why would anyone even want to claim the reverse world anyway? There's nothing fun to do here. It's just a bunch of portals and corridors in an MC Escher style place. Why does this guy want it? I will give the film one positive. It has the best line move experience so far.
Shaman, that's what it is. The gratitude Pokemon.
And my name's Brock, the gratitude person.
We're back to the good stuff. This is really fun. And yes, I say it as Arceus, not Arceus. I know it's apparently Arceus, but I say Arceus. And use my arse phone, alright? Arceus in the Jewel of Life also utilises the past, like Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, to brilliant effect, as we see essentially the dawn of human creation and their links with Pokemon. So much so that in the past they don't even have a name for the Pokemon, they just call them magical creatures. Arceus' arc, is well done and given justification, instead of your generic legendary Pokemon is powerful, so therefore a problem, as it is in a lot of these films. Deimos is one of the best individual characters we've met so far, well written, brilliantly voice acted, and has real tangible motivations. It was around this time that I realised any film that doesn't revolve around the usual, this evil person is trying to capture insert rare Pokemon here, and that's all, is way more enjoyable as the stories are more unique. Still a couple of issues. I thought the voice actor choice for Arceus was wrong.
The time has come. Human beings must be brought to justice!
His voice is too whiny for the literal god of all creation. And also, I found it a bit weird that one of the storylines are, hooray, we're free the Pokemon from enslavement in the past. As if they aren't just glorified slaves in real time and forced to fight in battles for our entertainment. Is that much better? Really? But apart from that, I enjoyed it. A special mention that this was the first Pokemon film released after the death of acclaimed voice actor and comic book writer Maddie Blaustein, the original voice of Meowth. A wonderful talent and an icon to transgender and intersex voices everywhere, who very sadly passed away far too young. Additionally, during the time I've been editing this and getting it ready, the very unfortunate news that Rachel Lillis, the English dubbed voice of Misty and Jessie from Team Rocket sadly passed away from cancer, far too young, and someone who, much like her other counterpart in Team Rocket, was a massive inspiration and part of many, many people's childhoods. My thoughts also go out to her friends and family. The only thing I have to say about this is that there's a shiny Raikou, which is quite cool, and they play football at the start. Nothing offensive, just dull. Right, before I get into this, there are two films with identical plots, so whilst I did watch both for this, I'm not going to cover them individually, assume all praise and all criticism for one is the same as the other. I'll be honest, I don't really know how to speak about this because there wasn't a clear villain, which is a strength, I want to be clear. Much like in Black and White the games, the so-called villain of the piece is actually coming from a very good place. I want to ensure life is better for both humans and Pokémon in a region that is slowly dying, but is manipulating Victini to do so. Damon, as a result, is one of the best written characters we've seen so far for this very reason. His desires are good, but his actions can arguably not be justified for the means. It's a morally grey area which I appreciate being so prevalent in what is, when you look at it objectively, a kids movie. I still didn't like how it kinda just devolved into the legendaries fighting each other with little involvement from the main characters, although Ash continues his "oh my god, he's dead, wait, he's alive" motif that is prevalent in almost every single one of these films. I was initially also going to give the movie extra props for actually killing off Victini to show the sacrifice it made, but unfortunately it came back for some Macrons, so no bonus point for you. Right, this is the worst one. I have nothing positive to say about Kyurem vs the Swords of Justice. It's the shortest film so far at just over an hour, and you really feel that. It's so strange, it feels like the film is basically in a race to the finish line, so multiple plot points are shown without context, then suddenly, flashbacks are shown to provide said context. Why wouldn't you just show it as it happened? Keldeo is so annoying. Not Shaman levels of annoying, but annoying. They try and present Ash and Keldeo as friends, which is what gives Keldeo his abilities at the end, but as I mentioned in regards to how fast the film is, they only had about 12 minutes of screen time together, so it doesn't feel earned at all. Pointless. Skip this. There's a Feraligatr in this one. Immediate bonus point. I immediately really like the new voice actor for Mewtwo. Miriam Paltrow does really well to make Mewtwo feel like a different character to the one we met right back at the start of this video, and I don't understand a lot of people's criticisms of the performance. I also like the characterization of Mewtwo, immediately understanding the plight of the Genesect, as they have a common creation story. Humans made them without thinking of the repercussions. Out with that though, not much to write home about. Mega Mewtwo and the Genesect move like speedsters a la the Flash, which is a cool way to show their movement, and the one Genesect who doesn't want to fight and just wants a home provides a good emotional core to the movie. Ironically, I feel the same about both the movies we've seen Mewtwo in so far. They're fine. Ah damn, back to Earth with another bad one. The worst version of the original Pokemon theme I think I've ever heard, although seeing Mega Absol was fun. A boring plot that doesn't really matter, a bunch of generic villains all trying to catch the main Pokemon, and then the two legendaries don't even fight at the end? They just stare at each other! Why? Moving on. The Pokemon introduced in this film can clap its hands and take anything from any point in space and time and bring it to them. What? Hoopa in the Clash of Ages isn't great. Team Rocket are quite central to the plot, hooray, and Lugia puts up a great fight in the second act, but that's all the positives I really have to say. So much of this movie is just a royal rumble of legendaries fighting each other, and it becomes overkill very quickly. Much like Shaman, I find Hoopa pretty irritating, and then I don't really understand the ending of this film, to be quite honest. It's something to do with space, time, Arceus, and the different space between it all? No idea. This film has given me one of my new favourite Pokemon, Volcanion. An absolute hero of the highest order. A big metal guy who's both a fire and water type who consistently cannot be arsed dealing with other people. Sign me right up. I stan Volcanion. Before we get into this, I just really noticed the villain in this looks like if James from Team Rocket evolved. I will be taking no further questions. This film bucks the trend for me in terms of bad guy tries to capture specific Pokemon for reasons, because honestly, it's just written better and the characters have clearer motivations. Volcanion's entire reason for being is to protect Magernia, so does not care about anyone else as a result. It has also seen what humans do to Pokemon in terms of forcing them to battle, abandoning them, hunting them, so you can completely understand their perspective. I think the idea of forced mega evolution is well executed and really showcases how cruel it is for the Pokemon affected, and it gives the supporting cast something to actually do whilst the main characters are fighting the final battle. Volcanion exploding to prevent everyone else from dying whilst in the moment thinking they failed in their one and only goal to save Magernia, but still doing it anyway, is some of the best character works in these films. Really well done. It's also amazing how Volcanion can't admit to itself that it likes humans, so has to refer to them as honorary Pokemon. And his decision to refer to Pikachu as electric nuisance exclusively is wonderful. I know I've harked on about a lack of stakes hurting a film's rating, but I'm willing to overlook it here. I'm glad everyone made it out alive and we're happy. Volcanion, he is our hero. New canon, everybody! So yeah, these final three films operate in different alternate universes, so aren't in canon, and retell the first two films specifically in a different way. I thought they did reasonably well in this one. I like this new version of Ash. He feels more responsible and less immature than his season 1 canon counterpart. Seeing the new way of how Ash got his Charmander and the trainer who abandoned it being the central villain was well done. I like the two new companions. One has Lucario, duh. The scene where Pikachu saves Ash from all the Spearow is brilliant. I know it's nostalgia bait, but hey, it worked on me. It's really well done, and for me, the better version of that scene. I thought the stuff where Ash goes into a dream state and experiences a world like ours without Pokemon was really unique, and something the Pokemon Company, to my knowledge, has never done before. Really enjoyed that, although I felt it could have been a wee bit longer. Oh yeah, and also, a Luxray actually bloody dies in this film, which is a pretty huge moment in the franchise. It actually froze to death saving a human. I will, however, get to the elephant in the room. Pikachu talking is really weird. It doesn't fit. I get what they were going for emotionally, but it's just so jarring. Never do that again. It's not perfect, and there's probably a solid argument to say it doesn't really need to exist, but hey, I'm a 90s/2000s kid, and I enjoyed my time with it. For me, this was the weakest out of the 3 non-canon films. It just wasn't super engaging. The plot was a generic, get this item to save the day type of thing, and the new characters didn't jump out at me. Knowing it was the equivalent of the second film, I was hoping Lugia was going to be a more central character, but it's barely in it and doesn't even say anything. Another instance of a Pokemon dying, this time a Snubbull in a fire, so we've still got that trauma to go through. There is a good message in it, that people are grey, not just clearly bad or clearly good, and your actions and intent are what define you. For a kids film, that is a good message to preach. And I will say, I think this is the best animation we've seen in any of these films. It's genuinely beautiful to look at the majority of the time. It was alright, just not much else to say. And here we are at the end. And we're ending with Tarzan. Yep, the Pokemon company just apparently decided, screw it, let's just make Tarzan but Pokemon. And it baffles me, we haven't had this until now. This one is an absolute ton of fun. Much like Volcanion's film, I now absolutely love Zarude, and it's entirely down to this movie. They sing an awesome song at the start. We are the strong ones, we have no fear. We are the pulse of the jungle. Lift up your voices. And have really well established characters. The idea of a human being raised by Pokemon seems like such an open goal in terms of content that it genuinely does confuse me why there hasn't been a thread of this that the company have tapped into more. Coco as a character is wonderful, you can really sense the animalistic nature from him by his movements and tone of voice. Dada is such a well written character, showing both the inner torment of knowing Coco isn't his own, but not knowing how else to raise him, all the way to his braggadocious nature and comments. One of the best lines in all these films, by the way, is,
"Are you gonna be okay?"
Of course! Remember, it's me!
The villain is so real and messed up. Probably the most real death ever in a Pokemon film is 2 people being run off a dirt track in a Jeep before it explodes as they save their son by putting him in a glorified Moses basket. Mad. The film then pivots to Avatar / Dances with Wolves style thing, with the forest uniting with Ash, Coco and the gang to stop the mechanised robots from the evil villain from destroying their home, and it ends with a human doing a Pokemon move. I know this isn't canon, but it asks really interesting questions for the future of the franchise and new possibilities. Screaming that you are your father's son and it causing the very fabric of known physics to change is one of the most metal things I've ever seen. Well in Coco. Team Rocket are also a key component to the story and help lock up the bad guy. Hooray! A wonderful way to end. And that's it. All 24 animated Pokemon films reviewed. I had a great time with this. Even though there were some real low points, it's still Pokemon at the end of the day. And by the way, yes, Detective Pikachu. I know, I've seen that a couple of times, but it didn't really fit into this because it's live action / animation. So look, I like it, 6 out of 10, alright? You can't get me with that one. If you've made it this far, absolutely fair play, rare candy to you, and a massive thank you for listening to me yammer away about all these movies. There is absolutely no way you agree with everything I say in this, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments, how I ranked all these films, and how wrong I was specifically about Destiny Deoxys. Please leave a like, comment and subscribe. Jump over to my Twitch channel if you want to see me actually play Pokemon. Who knows, I may even be live right now. And until then, I'll see you next time folks. Bye bye.